It's hard to be absolutely conclusive about what happened, but there's sort of three possible theories. One is that this was the Russian authorities, the Russian secret police organizing this attack. The reason that this theory has got some credibility is that this has happened before. This was effectively how Putin came to power in the first place back in 1999. He organized a bunch of fake domestic terrorist incidents, blamed it on the Chechens, started a war with the Chechens, and then rose to popularity and presidency off the back of that. And so it's entirely possible and plausible that this was a Russian FSB operation. The other theory, which also has a lot of credibility, is that this is just a terrorist incident. Like many terrorist incidents that have happened in Paris and London and New York, etc. ISIS has claimed responsibility. They produced a video which shows it. The alleged individuals, because we don't even know for sure if those are the people who did it, all appear to be from Tajikistan and from Muslim extremist groups. And so it could just be as simple as Putin has taken his eye so far off the ball with trying to squelch opposition and trying to fight the war in Ukraine that this was wide open. The one theory which doesn't make any sense, which is the theory that's being promoted by Putin and his associates, is that this was some CIA MI6 plot, which is complete idiocy. And certainly there's nothing to do with Ukraine, which is another spin they're trying to put on it, saying that without any evidence that somehow Ukraine is behind this. Ukraine doesn't need to do this. It doesn't serve their interests, and there's no evidence that they had anything to do with it. It's trying to create a narrative, and what my own experience with the Russians, and I've had a lot of experience with them, is that you can't trust a word that comes out of their mouth when there's any incident, any crime, any murder, because they just lie. The false flag claim is very credible, but so is the what you see is what you get claim of terrorism. And it's interesting because I've been reading everything that comes out, and I can't make up my mind because there's not enough evidence. And I know very credible people that believe that this was a false flag operation, and I know very credible people that believe it's just simple Islamic terrorism. And I haven't made up my mind, and I think that there's still a lot of evidence to come out. Russia has been traditionally a country which is not acting in the interests of the Muslim world. They've effectively occupied Syria with Assad and created all sorts of hardships for various Muslims in Syria. Of course, that they've done terrible things in Chechnya. And so there's a very clear and credible argument that Muslim extremists are trying to get revenge. They do it elsewhere. they do it with not just with Russia, but Bataclan in Paris, July 7th in London, and of course September 11th in the United States, and many others, of course. And so ISIS was active all over the Middle East. For a period of time, we had eliminated certain areas of their control. Afghanistan is now a completely sort of failed state, and they can regroup in Afghanistan if they want. And I understand that there's some links to this terrorist group to Afghanistan. So there's a lot of reasons why one could believe that this is a Muslim extremist attack, because that's what it looks like on the surface. It's very interesting because ISIS has made further threats to Russia since this attack, and as we know, Putin has reallocated every bit of resource into completely suppressing any political opposition, and of course the war in Ukraine. And so, if two people were to stand out with like signs saying, Putin is a murderer, they'd be arrested in 30 seconds. But it took an hour and a half for the police to get to the Crocus theater long after the assailants were gone. Putin is so paranoid about his own physical survival. You remember the long table where nobody could come anywhere near him. that if you wanted to meet with him during COVID, you had to be sitting in a quarantine for 2 weeks. He's so paranoid. I can't imagine that he would ever leave anything to chance here. I think he's going to use it to the maximum possible advantage. If it is a false flag operation, then perhaps the motivation for that is to change the mindset of Russians so he can go out and draft another 500,000 young men to throw into battle in Ukraine. Even if it wasn't organized as a domestic terror operation from inside, he will do that. This is a way to for him to bolster his sort of wartime situation, to get everybody riled up. And I'm sure that many people in Moscow are extremely upset, as they rightly should be, with this type of terrorist incident. I saw videos, I don't know if they're verified, of large groups of Tajiks at the airport leaving the country, because I think it'd be pretty rational to think that there would be some kind of retribution inside of Moscow to anyone of Tajik ethnic origin. Putin's next move has always been, after the election, to double down and triple down on Ukraine, to get more soldiers into the fight, to create more chaos and death in Ukraine. And that's what he's going to do. I mean, he's thinking that he's on a roll right now as far as Ukraine is concerned, because we're all, blinking in the West, that we're getting upset about sending more money to Ukraine, that we're looking for a solution. And he sees that as weakness, and he sees that as an opportunity to do more damage and to take more territory. And in his mind, he thinks he has a possibility of winning the war. He's got now a two-pronged issue, which is, fighting the war in Ukraine and domestic security. And the more people feel insecure in Russia, the more he's got to then focus on that as well. He can't just allow this stuff to happen. If he does, that could ultimately, be his downfall. If Russian people see him as being too weak to make them secure, that could also be a reason why people say, enough is enough. I mean, he has all the tools of brutality. I mean, it was horrifying. Nobody can have any sympathy for domestic terrorists who did something like this. But to look at what they did to those guys when they caught them, assuming that they are even the terrorists. I mean, one guy was missing an eyeball. Another one, they cut off his ear and made him eat it. Another one, they sodomized with a electric battery. I mean, it's just shocking, the type of stuff they do. It's just barbaric, and it's not the sign of a civilized country. Russia is a terrorist country. They're terrorizing Ukrainians every day. Hundreds of Ukrainians are dying every day from all sorts of Ukrainian civilians are dying every day from Russian terrorism. And so I don't think that you can distinguish and say, well, some group of people in a concert hall have greater rights than just random Ukrainians sitting in their apartment and having it blown up from a Russian missile.